Hey guys, it's Daniel here, and today I'm just going to quickly go over how to separate your lighting from your background. So here I've just opened up an old scene that I made of this sort of alien boils material, and you can see that it's got a few reflections happening, some cool lighting stuff, and that's from a combination of some point lights and also a HDRI that I have set up. But you'll see that my background actually doesn't really have a HDRI. It's just a simple gradient for my final render, just to give it a cool aesthetic with this aqua blue gradient that starts brighter at the top and gets darker at the bottom. And what I've done is I've actually made a node setup here in my world settings where I've set up the HDRI so that it lights my scene, but I actually don't see it. Instead, I just see this nice gradient, but the gradient isn't what's lighting my scene, it's just the HDRI. And I'll show you how I did that now. So I'll just go to solid view for a moment. I'll remove my boils material, that way I can render quicker. And I'll just go back into render view. Alright, there it is. Now I have this node set up. So the top one here is my HDRI. I've got my HDRI image in this node here. And I'll just plug that shader into my surface right here, into my output. And you'll see it's appeared here. So if I look around, you can see it's just a simple HDRI. I actually got it from HDRI Haven. I think it's called Polyhaven now. And I've just sort of changed the color to make it seem more alien, give it more of a blue tint for the final render. And that way it just casts a bit of blue light into the scene onto my boils material. And so yeah, that's what's showing up as the light source for my scene. And then in the bottom, I've got this shader here, and we'll plug that into the surface so you see what that looks like. And that's just my gradient that we saw earlier, which is in the background of my final render. And what's happening is both those shaders, my HDRI shader and my gradient shader, are coming together into this mix shader. And then with the factor, what we do is we get a light path node. So if we press Shift A to add a new node, we can find the light path node just here in the inputs. So there it is. I'll just delete that because we've already got one. Now what I've done is I've grabbed the camera ray and plugged that into the factor. And that's all you need. Basically what that does is it makes one of the sockets actually affect the scene, and then the other socket is visible to the actual image. So one socket is basically invisible but still affects the scene, and that's our HDRI, which is invisible, we can't see it, but it still lights our scene. Whereas the gradient has no interaction with our scene, but we can still see it. And that's just a way that you can easily, like if you're trying to show off a material like I've done with this scene, and you're just trying to show off a specific asset or object and give it a nice simple background, and you don't want all the noise of a HDRI in the background, but also be able to light it with a complex HDRI. Alright, and so you can see my final world shader is working here, where it's casting reflections from my HDRI image, but showing us the nice gradient as our background. Now if I were to just plug in our gradient, which is what we see in the background, and yeah, you can see it's changed dramatically. The lighting's not nearly as good or realistic because it's not getting that detail from the HDRI image, and it's just the flat gradient that I've created with a few of the point lights that I've put in the scene. Not nearly as good. Whereas with that shader setup, I was easily able to set up a nice smooth background while maintaining some detailed lighting from the HDRI image. We can see that bouncing around there. Alright, so I hope this video was helpful for you guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.